Elara adjusted the silver-stitched cuffs of her uniform jacket for the fourth time, her fingers trembling slightly as the shuttle approached its final docking position. Through the window, she saw the sprawling orbital campus of the Galactic Unity Academy, like a floating citadel sculpted from glass and alloy, lit from within by pulsating lights that shifted color with each heartbeat of the station's power core. It looked nothing like the schools on Earth. It looked like war disguised as elegance. The docking clamps hissed. A chime sounded. Doors opened. Elara was the last to rise. Most of the other students disembarking with her weren't human. The first was a crystalline creature, translucent limbs refracting the light into rainbows. Behind it, a reptilian being in a polished exosuit blinked at her with vertical pupils. She stepped out, her boots landing softly on a shock-absorbing floor engineered for multiple gravities. No one greeted her. No one spoke. The corridor smelled sterile and cold, like machinery had scrubbed every scent out of the air. Elara's escort, a thin droid with fractured voice box, led her past flickering banners bearing the Academy's motto in 12 languages. To learn is to prepare. The underlying message was clear. This wasn't just an academic institution. It was a crucible. Her dormitory room was a sterile cube with a glass wall overlooking the training arena, where drones flew in synchronized drills. She unpacked slowly, touching each item from home like a relic, a creased photo of her mother, a chipped enamel cup, a paperback novel with a cracked spine. By the time she slipped into the Academy Standard sleepwear, the lights had dimmed and the humming from the arena had stopped. Silence, at last. Morning came without ceremony. The alarm was a low, thrumming tone that bypassed her ears and vibrated directly in her bones. Elara dressed quickly, smoothing down her hair, checking her uniform again. She walked the halls alone until she found Lecture Hall Theta. Inside, rows of metallic desks stretched across a chamber that felt more like a tactical command center than a classroom. She was the only one in standard Earth attire. The others, about 30 in total, were their own regional variants, some armored, others ceremonial. There were tall insectoids tapping notes into hive-linked devices, short green-skinned creatures with wide black eyes and uniform robes, and even 3 androids with human-like faces. At the front stood Instructor Vorn, a figure draped in dark cloth, his face concealed beneath a mask that pulsed with a soft red glow. "Human," he said without looking up from the hollow table. "You are late." "I'm early," Elara replied before she could stop herself. The class turned as one to stare. Vorn's silence stretched like a wire pulled taut. Time is a perception bound to origin. Adjust yours. She took her seat. The lecture was less about equations and more about threat vectors, political alignments, and emergency simulations. The Academy didn't teach science or history in isolation. It taught through scenario. Today's case study involved a mining colony, a diplomatic envoy, and an unsanctioned drone strike. Elara's suggestion that diplomacy should precede force was met with silence and then a quiet, electronic laugh from one of the androids. "No force," murmured the android. "No survival." At lunch, Elara sat alone. The cafeteria served food designed to match each student's nutritional schema. Her tray was the only one with something as archaic as mashed potatoes. They were gray. "Trade?" a voice asked. She looked up. A short creature stood beside her, its head disproportionately large for its body, eyes wide and reflective. It held a glob of something that looked like jellyfish meat and smelled like peppered sulfur. "No thanks," Elara said, trying to sound polite. "I'm Kit Tar," the creature offered, sliding onto the bench anyway. "I've seen your Earth vids. You people cry a lot." Elara blinked. "We're expressive." "Same thing," Kitar said, scooping food into its tiny mouth. "Still, I'm curious. Why send one of you here? You're, what's the word?" "Vulnerable." "I've volunteered." "Brave," Kitar said, then paused. "Or very dumb." The word stung more than she expected, but she didn't respond. Instead, she watched the others. A group of students sat ringed around a holographic projector, playing some form of battle simulation. One caught her eye, a tall girl with metallic tattoos across her temples. Their eyes met briefly, and the girl nodded. Elara nodded back. That was the beginning of something. The days blurred into a pattern of relentless rigor. Physical training, tactical sims, alliance theory. The academy wasn't molding students. It was forging operatives. It didn't take long for Elara to notice the undercurrents. Whispers in the corridors. An instructor reprimanded for contradicting the narrative. Messages encrypted and erased within seconds. Someone hacked a console and left a single phrase pulsing on the screen. Be ready. Ready for what? She didn't have to wait long to find out. It happened during a tactical simulation, what was supposed to be a low-stakes classroom drill. Elara had just deactivated a virtual threat when the lights died. The floor vibrated. Then came the boom, so loud it stopped time. The far wall cracked, a fireball erupted, and half the room vanished in a blaze of light and heat. Metal screamed as it twisted. Shrapnel tore through desks. A student, one she'd seen laughing earlier, was gone in a blink. Smoke, shouting, then alarms, then gunfire. Elara hit the ground, heart slamming against her ribs, ears ringing. Somewhere in the smoke, she heard Vorn barking orders. Not simulation commands, real ones. The emergency shielding had failed. This wasn't a test. Kitar crawled toward her, bleeding green from one arm. You okay? It gasped. She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Around them, students, some screaming, some silent, fought to organize. Elara's fingers found a console, but it was dead. Through the shattered glass of the lecture hall, the rest of the station flickered under bombardment. The academy was under attack. Outside, one of the instructors activated a perimeter shield. A familiar figure stepped into the chaos, a woman Elara had never spoken to, but recognized instantly, the tall girl with the metal tattoos. We have to move, the girl barked. Follow me if you want to survive. Elara hesitated. Kitar didn't. Elara followed. Behind her, another explosion tore through the ceiling, raining fire on the place she'd been sitting just seconds earlier. And somewhere deep inside her, something shifted. She had come here to learn. Now it seemed she would have to survive. The corridor pulsed red with emergency lights as Elara ran, boots slapping the metallic floor, her lungs burning from smoke and fear. The academy, her supposed sanctuary of learning, had become a war zone in less than 2 minutes. Behind her, the remains of lecture hall theta smoldered under fractured ceiling panels and debris. The acrid stench of plasma burns and scorched alloy clung to her uniform. Ahead, the tall girl with the silver tattoos barked directions into a comlink. South stairwell sealed. Go to lift bay 14. Now! Kitar clung to Elara's sleeve, panting and limping, his arm wrapped in a strip of cloth that was rapidly turning from gray to dark green. What's happening? He gasped. Who's attacking us? I don't know, Elara answered, her voice thin and breaking, but she was beginning to understand. This hadn't come from outside. It was too precise. This was internal. A fracture from within the academy walls. They reached the lift bay. The doors were open, the platform intact, though the stabilizers flickered erratically. Students were crammed inside, some bloodied, others frozen in shock. One of the androids was manually overriding the console. Override access denied. It repeated coldly. Security clearance required. I have it. The tattooed girl snapped, pushing forward. Her fingers slid across a biometric scanner. The doors closed, and the lift began to descend. There was silence as they dropped into the lower levels, broken only by the occasional sob or labored breath. Elara stared at her. You're not a regular student, are you? I'm what they call contingency staff, the girl said, eyes locked on the floor's digital readout. Name Zara. I'm not here to learn. I'm here to keep people like you alive if things go wrong. Well, it went wrong, Kitar muttered. The lift jerked to a stop on sublevel 6, throwing everyone off balance. The doors opened to darkness. Zara moved first, stepping into the shadows with the ease of someone trained to expect danger. The others followed hesitantly, their trust in her growing by default. Leadership had become a matter of confidence, not authority. This is a logistics corridor, Zara explained as she activated a wrist light. It connects the supply depots and a backup comms node. If we're lucky, we can send a distress signal to the Unity fleet. Elara followed closely, eyes adjusting to the dim. The corridor was lined with crates. Some split open to reveal emergency rations and field medkits. The group broke into smaller units, some tending to the wounded, others creating makeshift barricades. We're not safe here, Zara continued. Whoever hit us knew exactly where to strike. They wanted to disable command, disrupt communications, and cut off support. Elara finally asked a question clawing at her throat. Was it an invasion? Zara hesitated. Not exactly. More like a mutiny. Internal factions, some instructors, students, even staff, have been organizing underground. They don't want unity. They want sovereignty. And they've decided to start their revolution here. A silence fell over the group. The word revolution settled into their bones with terrible weight. So what happens now? Kitar asked. His voice was soft, like a child asking about a storm too large to see. We fight back, Zara said, or we die. Elara's eyes scanned the faces around her, some filled with fear, others hardened with resolve. She felt the same conflict twisting in her chest. She was a student, not a soldier. She had come here to learn, not bleed, but the choice was gone now. She could feel it. The old self slipping away, the new one being forged in fire. A low hum filled the air, then static, then a voice, crackling over an open channel. To all surviving Academy personnel, this is Commander Relek. The Academy has fallen. Stand down, and you will not be harmed. Resistance will be met with force. Zara clenched her fists. Traitor, she whispered. Who is he? Elara asked. Head of Tactical Instruction. Highest combat clearance. He's been pushing separatist ideology for years. Just subtle enough to stay beneath suspicion. Looks like he finally made his move. Another voice came through, unfiltered, raw. If anyone's still out there, I'm in the East Hangar. Injured but armed. We need to regroup. It was Vorn. Elara's heart lifted. The strange, severe instructor who had seemed to barely tolerate her existence was still alive. More importantly, he was resisting. Zara glanced at her. You know the layout? I've studied the maps, Elara said, trying to sound braver than she felt. The East Hangar connects to the emergency launch bay. If we get there, we might live long enough to send a message. Zara finished. The group divided again. Zara took half toward the hangar. Elara, surprisingly, was asked to lead the rest in establishing a secure fallback point in the auxiliary training bay. Kitar refused to leave her side. As they moved out, Elara found herself speaking, giving directions, calming nerves, asking for status updates. The others listened. She didn't feel ready for any of it, but the Academy hadn't asked her if she was ready. It had simply changed and demanded she change with it. At the training bay, she set up watch posts. She taught them how to disable the old sparring drones for use as makeshift sentries. She repurposed one of the lesson consoles to serve as a signal amplifier. Every movement, every decision, felt like a test she hadn't studied for, but she passed again and again because failure meant death. Later, she sat alone near the bay entrance, her pulse finally slowing. Kitar sat beside her, cradling his bandaged arm. You're different, he said quietly. From the first day, you didn't belong. Now you do. I didn't want this, Elara said. None of us did. Doesn't matter, Kitar murmured. War doesn't wait for permission. A dull thud echoed down the corridor. Both of them snapped to attention. Then another sound, light footsteps, erratic breathing. Zara stumbled into the bay, blood soaking her side, one eye swollen shut. Vorn's dead, she rasped. Ambushed. We're losing the upper decks. Relek's men are locking down life support zones one by one. Elara rose, stepping forward. How much time do we have? Hours. Maybe less. But I got the codes from Vorn before he fell. Zara held up a blood-smeared data chip. This can access the mainframe in the command chamber. If we can get there, we can override the lockdown. Silence fell over the group again, but this time it was charged, not with fear, but resolve. They had a goal now, a path. Elara took the chip, her fingers steady. "Then we get there," she said. "Whatever it takes." Zara nodded, something like respect flickering in her battered expression. In that moment, surrounded by survivors who no longer saw her as the outsider from Earth, Elara felt the shift complete. She was no longer just a human exchange student. She was a leader, forged not by choice, but by necessity. Outside, the academy burned. Inside, resistance sparked. And Elara stepped into the fire without looking back. The door to the command corridor was fused shut. Elara stared at the scorched metal, its surface warped from weapons fire, and knew that whatever was on the other side would decide everything. The data chip burned cold in her pocket. Around her, the team, Zara, Kitar, 2 android cadets named Sin and J9, and a quiet, reptilian strategist named Velsh, waited for her command. None questioned her authority anymore. The path here had been carved in blood and fire. They crossed 3 levels under heavy surveillance, disabling drones, avoiding patrols, losing 2 members along the way. Every hallway reeked of betrayal. The academy had become an execution chamber dressed in the remnants of academia. What had once been a bastion of galactic peace was now a staging ground for ideological war. "We don't have the tools to cut through," Velsh said in a low voice. "But if we overload the corridor panel, it'll trigger the fail-safe blast." J9 interrupted. "We'll destroy the data chip with the door. Then we find another way," Elara said. She touched the wall beside the door, searching with her fingers until she found the access port. A scorched fiber-optic cable snaked out. Sin stepped forward silently and extended its multi-tool fingers into the conduit. "I may be able to bypass the lock from here," it said, "but it will take time." "We don't have time," Zara whispered, glancing down the corridor. Distant footsteps echoed from the dark, sharp and uniform. Relax men were sweeping the lower levels. They were being hunted. Sin's internal lights pulsed. 90 seconds. Hold them. Elara looked to the others. "You know what to do." Without waiting for a response, she took position at the corner, sidearm ready. Her hands didn't shake anymore. Kitar crouched beside her, clutching a small plasma emitter he barely knew how to use. Zara limped to the opposite end of the corridor. Her remaining eye narrowed, breathing shallow. Velsh vanished into the shadows, ready to flank. The seconds stretched. Footsteps grew louder. Then they appeared, 3 figures in matte armor, visors opaque, rifles drawn. Elara fired first, aiming low. 1 fell, leg shredded. The others returned fire, sparks exploding against the walls. Kitar screamed something unintelligible and activated the emitter, unleashing a wild blast that scorched the ceiling. The noise was deafening. The smell of ozone and blood filled the air. Zara moved like a phantom, crossing the space in 2 strides and driving her blade into the gap beneath a soldier's helmet. The last one turned, too slow, and caught Velsh's clawed strike in the throat. It dropped without a sound. Silence again. "Door!" Elara gasped. Sin's fingers sparked, then retracted. The control panel blinked green. Access granted. The door groaned open. Inside, the command chamber flickered with dim emergency lighting. It was circular, with consoles arranged in a radial pattern around a central interface. Screens flashed warnings in multiple languages. System override in progress. Security lockdown active. External communications disabled. Elara rushed to the main terminal, sliding the data chip into place. The interface shimmered, then projected Vorn's encrypted signature across the console. "Command clearance recognized," the system announced. Her fingers flew across the interface, bypassing security nodes, disabling passive blocks. Each prompt required confirmation in Galactic Standard, which she had only begun to master weeks ago. But she understood it well enough now. "J9, she called. "I need you on surveillance. Track enemy movement." J9 plugged into a side console, and its eyes flared. They're regrouping in the hangar, preparing another push. 20 soldiers. Ite 7 minutes. "Then this has to work," Elara said. Behind her, Zara leaned against a pillar, breathing hard. "If you can open external comms, I can boost the signal from the relay tower." That's in the reactor spine, Kitar said, his voice trembling. That zone's gone dark. Zara looked at him, then at Elara. Then I'd go alone. No, Elara said sharply. You won't make it. We go together. We all go. You'll lose time. We lose you. We lose more than time. Elara locked eyes with her. You're a part of this now. You all are. There was no protest. The decision had been made. Together, they reconfigured the lockdown system. The Academy's fail-safes had been built under the assumption of external threats, not internal rebellion. That gave them loopholes, access points meant for diplomats or visiting dignitaries, backdoors hidden from even most instructors. Vorn had known those cracks. And now, through him, Elara did too. By the time they finished unlocking the systems, they had 4 minutes left. J9 rerouted power to the maintenance tram. It was an old line, barely used, but it ran straight to the reactor tower's base. They piled into the car, Zara clutching a relay packed to her chest. As the tram rattled through dark tunnels, no one spoke. The air was heavy with anticipation, grief, and something hard to name. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of it. The tower loomed ahead, a jagged spire of steel and glowing conduits. At its core, the signal array pulsed like a beating heart. It was still functional. Barely. Zara and Elara moved as one. Kitar stayed behind to monitor the relay controls, his eyes wide with dread. The climb was brutal. Metal stairs, half-melted ladders, unsecured railings. The blast that had taken out the western wing had scorched part of the tower's framework. Every step upward was a gamble. Halfway up, they heard the tram explode. Kitar, Elara nearly turned back. Zara grabbed her wrist. He made a choice, she said through gritted teeth, so we could finish. Elara's vision blurred, but she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She climbed. At the top, wind from the station's damaged pressure seals howled through broken plating. They reached the relay array, its circuits frayed, the interface flickering. Zara jammed the pack into place. Sparks flew. The signal tower lit up briefly, gloriously. Elara activated the command key. Unity Fleet Command. This is Cadet Elara Miles. The Academy has fallen to internal separatists. We need extraction and full military response. Coordinates locked. Silence. Then, signal received. Zara collapsed beside her. Her wound was worse than she'd admitted. Blood soaked her side, pooling beneath her. Elara pressed her hand against the wound. We did it. Help's coming. Zara smiled weakly. Told you belonged. The signal array pulsed again, stronger now, connecting to satellite relays. Unity Fleet would come. Relay control would end. But Elara didn't feel triumph, just a heavy, exhausted certainty that everything had changed. As the wind roared and sirens wailed in the distance, Elara sat beside Zara, her hand still pressed over the wound, eyes locked on the stars above. They were still there, still watching. And now, they would finally answer. The dropships arrived at dawn. Elara stood at the edge of the collapsed signal tower, the wind tugging at her tattered Academy uniform. Below, the courtyard where Relax forces had made their final stand was now a graveyard of metal and ash. Unity Fleet insignias gleamed on the sides of descending craft, their engines cutting through the early morning haze. Help had come, but too late for many. She had not slept. After the signal was sent, she had waited with Zara's fading pulse against her palm, whispering reassurances long after her breathing had gone still. The others were scattered, some captured, some hiding, some already gone. Of the original group that had fled Lecture Hall Theta, only a handful remained. A young officer disembarked from the first ship, flanked by soldiers in obsidian armor. "Cadet Miles," he called out. Elara turned, her eyes sunken and cold. "Yes." He stopped short, taken aback by the sight of her, blood-streaked, bruised, every inch of her radiating exhaustion and fire. "Commander Vilek of the 11th Response Division, we received your transmission. I know. Is the situation under control?" "No," she said simply, "but it's over." Vilek scanned the area, taking in the scorched ruins and dead machinery. "Where's Commander-elect?" "Gone," she replied. His last stand was in the central plaza. We sealed it after we cut power to the weapons grid. He chose death over surrender. Vilek nodded grimly. And the others? Dead, fled, or ours. He studied her for a long moment, then stepped forward and extended a hand. Your leadership prevented a massacre. You held this place together when your command fell apart. Elara didn't take his hand. I didn't lead them. They chose to follow. He lowered his arm, respectfully. Then they chose well. Behind him, more soldiers were fanning out, offering aid, scanning for survivors, stabilizing perimeter. The academy, or what was left of it, had become a war crime site. Unity legal observers would arrive next. There would be inquiries, testimonies, judgments. But Elara didn't care about any of that. Not yet. A stretcher was brought forward. On it lay Zara, still wrapped in the thermal blanket Elara had found in the supply cache. One of the medics glanced at her and said, "She held out longer than she should have. We'll try to preserve what we can." Elara moved beside the stretcher and gently pressed Zara's fingers. "She wasn't trained to die for this," she said. "She just decided to." Later, they brought her into a debriefing chamber. What had once been a student study hall. The murals had been scorched, the walls still charred. She sat across from Vilek and an intelligence officer with piercing green eyes and a tablet glowing with data. "We've pieced together enough of the internal comm logs," the officer said. "The Separatists had been building this movement for over 3 years. Relek's lectures were coded with phrases that signaled alignment. Some of the students had been recruited from day one. I figured that out 2 weeks ago," Elara said. No one listened. "You're not wrong." The officer didn't flinch, which is why the Fleet Council will want to speak to you directly. "I'm not interested in politics." "You don't have a choice," Vilek said. "You're the only surviving witness with command-level access to what happened here. That makes you more than a cadet now. I didn't ask for that either. None of the good ones ever do." The word stuck with her as the debriefing ended. She wandered the academy grounds, her steps slow, each hallway echoing with the memory of voices that would never return. The dorms had collapsed during the second wave of fighting. The cafeteria was a ruin. Her old datapad, left behind the day the war began, was somehow still intact beneath a cracked desk in the student commons. She powered it on. The screen flickered, then lit with her notes, her old schedule, her first recorded message home. "Day 1 at the Galactic Unity Academy. The stars are bigger here. I don't know anyone. Everything feels too fast, too strange. But maybe I'll learn to belong." She closed it and slid it into her pocket. That night, Unity's cleanup team set up camp in the auxiliary hangar. Elara stayed apart, sitting atop a stack of old training drones. She watched the skies shift to indigo through a ragged hole in the roof. There was no celebration, no parade of victory, only the quiet aftermath. Welsh joined her, his scales dull with fatigue. "They say we'll be sent to the new Interim Academy on Daron Prime." "I heard," she replied. "They want to keep the survivors together." He tilted his head. "Do you think that's wise?" "I think it's necessary." They sat in silence a while longer. "I never believed you'd make it to the first term," Welsh said finally, "but I'm glad you did." Elara gave a faint smile. "I didn't make it through. I just changed. And now I know who I am." From behind them came a new sound, the distant hum of approaching engines. She turned and saw another ship descending, smaller, sleeker, civilian markings. From it emerged a woman in dark robes, Fleet Council colors. "Elara Miles," she called out. Elara stood, shoulders straight, pain rippling beneath her calm. "You've been summoned," the woman said. "You are no longer a student. You are a witness, a symbol, and possibly more." Elara met her gaze. "I'll come, but I'm not giving speeches." "You'll do what needs to be done," the woman said, as if it were a certainty. Elara looked back once at the academy ruins, where a generation had either died or transformed. Then she stepped forward into the ship, into the uncertain light of whatever came next. Not a student, not just human, something else. And the war wasn't over. Not really. It had only just changed shape.